Hi everybody, my name's Rachel and today I will be showing you how to make sourdough bagels. These are a huge hit in all of my circles. I make 2 to 4 batches of these per week. They go really quickly because they are delicious. The recipe comes from Amy Duska at Little Spoon Farm and I will link her recipe and blog post below. Let's get started. The first step is to feed my sourdough starter. I just got it out of the fridge. It's pretty depleted. I milled some wheat. You can use all-purpose as well. I just did a bunch. I'm going to add some water. I will mix it up until it's the correct consistency. And it looks something like this. Thick pancake batter. Some people measure, I do not. That looks good for me. I'll clean off my spoon. I will add my silicone lid so it's slightly ajar. It needs airflow to get all bubbly, and I will use it tonight. For this recipe, the schedule goes something like feed your sourdough starter in the afternoon. I do nap time because I have kids, and then make the dough in the evening. I do that after the kids go to bed because I have time, and then let it rise overnight. In the morning, you shape it into bagels and let them rise for 1 to 2 hours based on how warm your house is and how puffy you want them. Boil them and then bake them. It seems like a lot of steps, but it's very minimal hands-on time, so you will see in the video how I do that. But feed your starter, make the dough, rise overnight, shape, let them sit, boil, bake them. Everything happens pretty quickly, and I can still do it with my 2 little kids running around, so I think you can too. It is now evening and I'm getting ready to mix my bagel dough so it can bulk rise overnight. I have all my tools and ingredients here. You will need wheat or flour, honey, salt, and sourdough starter, and I think some water too. You'll see I have a scale here. This recipe I'm using uses grams as the measurement. They do also have cups as an option, but grams are more accurate, especially when you're baking. I also like to use recipes with grams because I can easily switch between freshly milled grains and all-purpose flour. The weight is much more accurate when you're switching between those two. So I will show you my sourdough starter is plenty bubbly now and ready to bake or mix the dough and bake tomorrow. Lots of bubbles. It is ready to go. You know that your sourdough starter is ready to use when it has reached its peak. So when it hits the top and then starts deflating, that's when you want to use it. That's when it's ideal. I've certainly used it many other times and it has worked just fine. So don't overthink that too much. I also want to note that this recipe makes 8 bagels, but I'm going to double it. These are so good that they go really quickly. They also freeze well for easy make-ahead meals or snacks, whatever. So I always double it. If you don't have a Bosch mixer or another heavy-duty, really powerful mixer, you may just want to do 1 batch at a time because the dough is quite stiff. I did try to do a triple batch the other night, and even the Bosch did not like that. So double batch it is. The first thing I'm going to do is get my wheat milled into flour. If you're using all-purpose flour, you can totally skip this step. I like to mill my grains fresh, so I measured out my 1,000 grams of hard white wheat here that I will turn into my flour. That's approximately 8 cups of flour, so it seems like a lot. It's not that much when you're making a big batch of bagels. I will put it through my mill over here and then it will be ready to mix in all the other ingredients. I will prepare all of those while the wheat is going through the mill. I have a mock mill. To use it, you turn on switch on this side. It's on. Grab some wheat, put it in the top. I probably should have picked a larger bowl for the flour, but anyway, we got it all in there, all milled. It is still warm from coming through the mill, really fine, really nice to work with, and full of wonderful nutrition. So I will transfer all of this flour to the mixer. I already have all the other ingredients in here, and I will start mixing the dough. All of my flour is in my mixer. I'm going to add my lid so I don't have a puff of flour, and I'm going to mix it until the dough just comes together, and then I'll turn it off again. I turned my mixer off to check. The dough looks pretty coherent at this point. Normally I would just let it sit from here and let the flour absorb the water. Because I'm using freshly milled flour, it takes longer for those grains to absorb the water and whatever fats are in there. But I still see some dry stuff at the bottom of my mixer. I have noticed that because it's winter and the heat is on, I need a little more water in my baked goods. So I'm going to add some more water, mix it a little bit more, and make sure there aren't any dry bits on the bottom of my mixer. Ta-da! That solved the problem. So you'll see the bottom of my bowl is clean. Everything has been picked up into that ball of dough. I'm going to let it sit for 5 or 10 minutes to let the water absorb. If you're using all-purpose flour, you can just keep on kneading until you have your bagel dough consistency. While I'm waiting for my bagel dough to be ready, I decided to feed my sourdough starter. I milled some hard red wheat. In case you notice the color difference, this is hard red. The bagels are using hard white. Mill some wheat to put in my sourdough starter. I will be making a double batch of bread in the morning, so I need plenty of sourdough starter. Put my flour in there. Put some water in there. Mix it up. Put my lid on it and it'll sit on the counter, and I will bake again tomorrow because that is what I like to do. The bread will actually be going toward, and some of these bagels, toward a friend who is having her first baby on Monday. It is such a cozy gift. Moms postpartum need easy snacks, really nutritious, good food, and what better than a hearty sandwich, egg sandwich on the bagels, or just, you know, peanut butter toast, because when you're getting little sleep and learning how to take care of a little one, that's what you gotta do. I also wanted to share that knowing these baking techniques, understanding these skills, being able to put together bagels and bread, these are wonderful things to serve my family, but they're also wonderful gifts to share with other people. These are so special to others because it's kind of a lost art, but it makes me feel so good knowing that I can share something nutrient dense from these freshly milled grains, something that's been properly fermented and has all of those nutrients accessible to their guts because of the sourdough, to know that I put in love to every single bite of the food that they will eat. It is so, so special. So if you are watching these trying to learn how to make bagels, to make bread, to make whatever from scratch at home as best you can, know that your love comes through and it is totally worth it. Keep going, keep making things, keep sharing, because it means the world to a lot of people, and I think it is something that we should not lose. We should be generous with our time and our baked goods. So keep baking, my friends, keep learning, and keep sharing, because all of my stuff always gets eaten, and I'm pretty sure yours will too. Back to bagels. My dough's been sitting here for a little while, and I'm going to turn my mixer on and let it go. The recipe recommends kneading it or putting it in the mixer for 6 to 7 minutes. I would guess I probably usually do around 5, but we'll see what it is this time. I just turned the mixer off. It had been on for 6 minutes on high. Let's check the dough. Ooh, that is stretchy. That is wonderful. I think I will call that good. I often check for the window pane test with my dough, but because this dough is so dense and it doesn't rise like regular bread dough, I don't get too worried about the window pane test. I can see that it's smooth and elastic, and I've watched it go around the mixer and seen it stretch. Yeah, like that'll make a nice dough to work with tomorrow. This is normal stickiness, I would consider. Definitely don't add more flour. It's dense enough as it is. So I will take the dough hook out and cover it and show you how I get it ready to rise overnight. There you have it. I like to spread out the dough the whole way around my mixer so it rises a little more evenly and doesn't make the bowl like too big on one side or push up against the lid, things like that. So I spread out my dough, I'll put my lid on. I recommend My Bosch has this really nice lid that is just vented enough. So you need some airflow, but not too much airflow because it will create a skin, like a hard top on it. And that's difficult to mix in and not what you want with your dough. So a lid, a silicone lid just off the side a little bit, kind of like I do my sourdough starter here. There's a little bit of airflow. You could do a very wet tea towel because it will be sitting overnight. And like I said, it's winter, so, or fall. It's cold outside, so the heat is turned on. It will dry the towel more quickly. Some people do plastic wrap or beeswax wraps. That would work too. So that's it. This is what it looks like right now, and I will bring you back in the morning when it is nice and puffy and ready to be shaped into bagels. Good night. Good morning. It's time to check on the bagel dough and shape it into bagels. So the first step will be to get it all out of the mixer, and then I will roll it into balls, shape it into bagels. We'll let them sit for 1 to 2 hours so they can rise and get a little puffy. Then we will boil them and then we will bake them. Let's check on the dough. This is where I left it last night. Let's see how much it has risen. Woohoo! It's always so satisfying to look at it after it has risen. I get so excited that sourdough does this. And you know, before yeast came in packets in like the 1940s, this was just called yeast because it rose your breads. I have my mixer full of dough. I have a clean countertop. Let's get this out and start separating it. It should make 16 bagels because I did a double batch. I'll cut it in half, put that off to the side, and then this half should make 8 bagels. So you can measure these to make them exact or cut them, but I can't use a bench scraper on my countertop, so I just rip. And they always turn out just fine. So here we have 2, 4, 6, 8. I will show you how I shape them. Here's one. So just a ball of dough. I will, let's see, I will pull it around to create some tension on the top, rotate it, pull it. So I have one seam here on the bottom. I'll pinch the seam together. So smooth top, seam pinch on the bottom. I am more careful about this when I do it with rolls, like dinner rolls or hamburger buns or something like that, because people will actually see it. But I just pinch the seam here at the bottom, and I'm going to stick my thumb through it anyway, so don't worry about it too much. Okay, seams on the bottom. I'm going to push a hole in the middle, pull it open. I like to open it this way. And then sometimes I get spots that are thicker than others, so I will like roll it out this way, stretch it a little bit, just make it look like a bagel. You've all seen a bagel, you've all eaten a bagel, right? So there's my finished product. Let's do another one. And then when I'm done, I just set them on the counter. Okay, ball of dough. I'm gonna make it into a nicer ball, or like a roll style. So pull down from the top, rotate it, pull down from the top, and then I have the seam at the bottom. I'm gonna pinch it closed. Okay, ugly seam bottom. Put one finger there, one finger on the top, and just smush it through. Rip that hole open. And I usually widen the hole a little bit. See how this part's skinny and this part's thick? I'm gonna stretch this a little bit. Make it a little more even. This part's thicker as well. Sometimes I will like roll it between my hands. And I'm gonna say that's good enough. They're homemade bagels, right? Let's do one more. Pinch the seam. Nice pretty top. Ugly seam bottom. One finger goes here, one finger goes in the top. Open the hole. Check to make sure all the sides are even. Looking good. And repeat. And there you have it, 16 homemade bagels shaped and ready to rise. They look pretty good on camera, but I want to show you, like this one, I'm proud of this one. This one looks really nice and round, but then you have other ones that are, you know, that one's kind of weird looking, but they're homemade bagels. They will even out a little bit as they rise and get puffy, and when they boil, then they get rounder and they get prettier and smoother and stuff. So don't worry about it too much. Just make your bagels. They will taste delicious no matter what you do. Next step, I will grab a kitchen towel to toss over these. Let them rise for 1 or 2 hours, depending on the temperature of your house and how puffy you want them, how strong your sourdough is, stuff like that. And I'll be back to boil those. In the meantime, I'm going to use this lovely bubbly sourdough starter that we fed last night and just put more ingredients in my mixer to make those loaves of bread. See you in a bit. These have been rising for about an hour. I can tell they're much puffier than they had been. Remember this dorky one? The hole is almost closed because they have gotten puffy. Now I know they are ready to boil. Let's come over here to the stove. I have a pot of water here. I will turn the temperature up there. And we need the oven to 425 degrees. You'll also see on my stovetop I have my baking sheet ready. I put a silicone mat down. You can also use parchment paper to put your bagels on. I also have everything bagel seasoning that I like to put on top of my bagels. Sometimes I'll do coarse salt too, or whatever other toppings you like. Cheese is also very delicious on top. We have boiling water. People ask me, what is the point of boiling the bagels before you bake them? Boiling them helps keep their shape in the oven so they actually bake in the correct bagel shape instead of spreading out like other baked goods would. It also helps make them chewy. So I haven't tested this for myself, but I've read online that the longer you boil them, the chewier they are. The recipe I'm using says to boil for 2 minutes per side. I only do 1 minute per side because that's the correct chewiness for us. I also have toddlers eating them, so too chewy equals not edible. So let's get these bagels in the hot water, onto the tray, and then in the oven. We add 1 tablespoon of sugar to the water. Help with the crust on the outside, and then we go get some bagels. You can use a tool for this. I just use my hands. I pick it up gently. Bring it over and carefully plop it in. Let's get some more. This gigantic one. Into the water. Okay, then I will set a timer, boil for 1 minute per side. Can you see how the side of the bagel that's in the boiling water is getting darker brown? It's forming that crust. There's my timer. Just using a little turner here. Okay, buddy, hang on a sec. There you go. Flipped it. Ready to... 1 more minute. Then I'll pull them out. That has been our 1 minute. Let's pull them out. And then onto the baking sheet. These will be everything seasoned bagels. So I have my seasoning here. Sprinkle it on top while it's still wet, and the topping will stick. And then we do it all over again. Let's get some bagels. I often do 3 per pot. You don't want to overcrowd it. But I also like to be efficient because I have little people waiting for me to finish this. So I'm gonna get the 3rd bagel in there, start the timer, and just continue. I'll show the flipping process again. Let me turn the timer off. Grab whatever tool you have, flip it over in the water. There you go, set the timer for 1 more minute. Let them boil. Put them on the baking tray. This part can seem a little time consuming and tedious to just boil bagels 1 minute per side, flip them, come back, but I use my oven timer that beeps at me, so even when I'm here with my kids, I can just set it, go play, do a puzzle, read a book for a minute, come back, flip, and keep going. So I do have to check into the kitchen every minute or so, but I can multitask during this part. So the process of bagels it takes some time, but the hands-on time is pretty minimal if you can juggle things. And my kids understand they can bring books in here, they can work with me as long as they don't touch this, of course, but you can do it with little kids around. I rearranged these bagels a bit to get them to fit on the baking sheet. They do puff up in the water, so you have to get a little creative. Half of them are everything bagel seasoning, half are shredded cheddar cheese. I'm going to get ready to put them in the oven, but I wanted to make a note about the oven. So I put my rack right in the middle, right in the middle. That's important for me. Yesterday I made a batch and I did 2 racks. One was higher than the other one, and the tops of the top ones were burnt and the bottoms of the bottom ones were burnt. So middle rack is the way to go so they bake evenly. Yes, I did flip them around and it still didn't help. So let's see if this works better. My other baking tray will go over here when all of these bagels are boiled and ready to go. This tray of bagels I'll just sprinkle with some salt. I consider these plain bagels. And then these will go in the oven as well. The recipe calls for a baking time of 25 to 28 minutes. My oven runs hot, but I still find that they are done in about 22 minutes. So I would recommend starting with a 20-minute timer and checking them because they will brown quickly and you don't want burnt bottoms or tops. These just came out of the oven. They were in there for 23 minutes. I could tell they're ready because that's golden brown on top. The cheese is nice and brown. And if I check the underside, it's lightly golden brown, not black. So next step, remove these to a cooling rack. Let them cool as long as possible. Well, resist the urge to eat them this hot. They won't cut as nicely, but I understand that's difficult. Here are the finished plain bagels. Lightly golden brown on top, flaky sea salt for delicious flavor and presentation, ready for the cooling rack. It's time to cut it open and see what the inside looks like and give it a taste test, although I already know it'll be delicious. I used a plain bagel for this demonstration so I don't get cheese and bagel seasoning everywhere. Still a little bit warm. I should have waited longer, but I'm excited to eat them. Really soft. So good. So good. Anything you put on top of it, it will be delicious. And it's good plain too. I find, excuse me, it is just the right amount of chewy. Anyway, I find that because it is made from whole wheat flour, freshly milled whole wheat flour, it stays really soft, like you cannot even tell this is whole wheat. But also between the whole wheat flour and the sourdough, it gives it a really good flavor. Like I feel like bagels from the store don't taste like much, they taste like what you put on them. But the whole wheat flour, the sourdough, it really gives these a depth of flavor that I can just eat it plain because it tastes really good. It's really enjoyable. It makes excellent, excellent breakfast sandwiches, any kind of sandwich, just a snack. I'll put jam on it for breakfast for my kids, peanut butter, what have you. It is a great, versatile thing to have around, great thing to give away, and they will disappear pretty quickly. So I hope this was helpful to you. Please leave any questions you have and I would be happy to answer them. Happy baking!